It was about 15 years ago, and I was at a writers' conference, and I met a writer, and we hit it off, and we decided to go get some lunch. He was a really nice guy, and he had a great career so far. He had published a bunch of books, been on the New York Times bestseller list. He just had one come out, got a big advance for it, was doing well. But he told me over lunch he had had it. He was ready to hang up his boots. Because he was so sick of the inner critic, he couldn't stand listening to it. The inner critic just hounded him through his writing session, and I hadn't really started coaching at that point, but I ended up doing an impromptu coaching session with him there at lunch and kind of helped him through it. It was really a nice experience, nice for him, nice for me. I was really glad I could help him. And so we ended up spending a lot of time together at that conference. And I noticed how often he kind of badmouthed other writers or criticized them. And he was pretty hard on them in a lot of ways. And it struck me then, in a way that it hadn't before, that whatever we think about other writers, we often think about ourselves. And this was driven home actually not long after when I went and interviewed the first romance writer that I interviewed. I actually did it at her house. I described this in my book, Everyone Has What It Takes. But she was a romance writer, very nice woman, beautiful house. But, she had her insecurities and her fears and her doubts. And I sat there and had that conversation. Again, romance, not my cup of tea. And if I'm honest, growing up, I had some judgment about romance writers because the way they told their stories is so different from how I told mine. But as I talked to her and got to know her as a person, as a writer, I understood that lo and behold, her books meant as much to her as my stories meant to me. And more importantly, her books fit her life just as well as my stories fit mine. In other words, those kinds of stories were right for her and the way she looked at life and the way she dealt with creativity and the way she wanted to relate to other people and what she wanted to share. It made sense. And I wouldn't want her to stop writing those stories, even though they weren't the kind of stories I like to write. Look, when you're reading other writers, you're going to come across stuff you don't like. And that's fine. You don't have to like everything. I don't. In fact, my aesthetic preference is pretty narrow. But that doesn't mean you should call them a bad writer. Even though you might see something they've written and think, oh, that's no good. Don't call them bad writers in your head, because a bad writer, I think, has committed a kind of sin. They have revealed something ugly about themselves unknowingly. And if someone else can do that, if someone else can be a bad writer, can commit that sin, well, so can you. And if you believe it's possible to be that kind of writer, how can you not write in fear? Not writing what you want to share, not writing out of love, not writing towards the story you want to tell, but away in fear, away from the idea of being a bad writer. How do I create something that isn't bad? You can't. It's in the negative. All you can do is tell the story you want to tell. And there will be people who will think it's bad. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. I know it's annoying. What we think about others is what we think about ourselves. It's true, though. It's true. So forgive the writers for writing stories that you don't enjoy. But don't call them. If you met these people, you would think very differently of them. I really don't read anything if I don't meet the writer these days. It's been that way for the last 15 years. And everybody's telling the story they're supposed to tell. That's the truth. And I don't have to call it bad. I don't have to call them talentless. A lot of them writing stuff that I'm not interested in, and that's just fine. You tell your story. Don't run away. Go towards the thing you want. Go towards the light. Go towards what you love. And then when you're finished, share it and let the people who are meant to find it go towards it. Yeah. That's how it works. That's how it works, people. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you don't want to miss a dose of this inspiration, hit subscribe. And if you like it, say so. I do love to hear from you. So until next week, this is Bill Kenower. Stay fearless.